Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Supersonic Countdown, where we'll be talking about the history of Sonic the Hedgehog from the very beginning of the series, all the way in 1991, all the way to the more recent endeavors from our favorite Blue Devil. Last night, I, albeit loosely, talked about the first game. To that, I say I'm sorry for deviating so much from the original topic. It's just, I had a lot on my mind. But anything, yeah, sorry. Anyway, actually getting back to that subject very briefly before we go on to the subjects of tonight's episode. I forgot something. So, the overall design of Sonic was, yeah. Wait. I think I accidentally pressed shift. Yeah, so I forgot to talk about the character himself. So his actual concept and creation was started in, well, let's just say that as it says here in the wiki, let me turn this down. So the original conceptual stages for a Sega mascot, yes, I'm talking about Sega as a whole. This all started, as it says here, back in April of 1990, and eventually it would all transpire into what would end up being everyone's favorite blue hedgehog. So essentially, Sega had used Alex Kidd right here as their mascot for a little while, but because he was too similar to Mario, they instead decided that, you know what, hey, we should probably make a character that would be different from Mario and have their own games centered around said character. As such, they got to work, and originally, the character who would end up being Dr. Eggman slash Robotnik was originally intended to be the main character. However, let's just say that they threw around ideas of different animals, and a hedgehog was considered to be the mascot. You could see where this is going, and originally he was just going to be called Mr. Hedgehog, but obviously as time progressed, they went to, this. I mean, that's not how we looked back in the day. That's how he looks now. But, yeah. I will admit, though, I love the story of how they went on to create Sonic, because one of the ideas was a rabbit, as it says right here, but it was too complex for the Sega Genesis slash Mega Drive, and so they narrowed it down to an animal that could roll into a ball. Interesting to note, this armadillo idea right here would end up being carried over to Mighty the Armadillo. The hedgehog, however, well, as it says here by right here, the hedgehog character, which was proposed by Naoto Oshima, ultimately prevailed. After that, Oshima went on vacation in New York, taking sketches with him. There, he went to Central Park, where he would ask locals for their opinions on them, which led to the hedgehog character being deemed the favorite. And so, yeah. Yeah, they then juggled names and everything. And even whenever the first game came out, Sonic had a design that wasn't quite finalized. So they had Teal. Oh, wait, no. Never mind. His fur was originally teal, but they gave him a light shade of blue, but then dark blue. And the reason why they decided on the darker blue is because, as it says right here, some of the backgrounds, like say for example, there's a waterfall. They ended up doing the darker fur color to make him stand out from those backgrounds. But as for Sonic's shoes, the iconic red sneakers, or I'm sorry, boots. Yeah. So here's a fun fact. They are not actually shoes. I mean, they are, but yeah, it says here they're actually boots. So according to Naoto Oshima, one of the creators of the Sonic character, those actually are not sneakers. They kind of look like sneakers, but they're actually boots. However, in the original games, the shoes didn't have any visible soles on the bottom. Instead, it was just dark red. However, starting with Sonic Adventure, they actually had a little bit more detail to them. And so because of that, you would actually see the bottoms of the shoes. And what's really cool about this shoe is, in terms of the Sonic lore, the shoes themselves are nearly resistant entirely to friction. So, a good example of this would be Sonic Frontiers. And the reason why I bring this up, also, look at that! Different box art! But I want to show something off. So, the soles right there are made of a sort of metallic-like material, but they aren't quite metal. But, yeah. Hello. Yeah, there it is. So, oh, right. Here's a pretty funny little detail about Sonic in terms of, like, you know, all that other stuff. So, it's obvious that his design was made blue partially as a reference to Sega's logo, because at the time it was their current logo and it still is, and it's blue. So they wanted Sonic to match that color. But his overall design was originally created by combining Felix the Cat's head with Mickey Mouse's body. Obviously not as cartoonish, but it's still kind of cartoony, but it's still somewhat grounded in reality. But Sonic's shoes, or I'm sorry, boots, are inspired by Michael Jackson's boots for the cover art of Bad. And Santa Claus's Santa Claus's clothing, because of like the red and white color scheme. But his personality, yeah. So Bill Clinton's get it done attitude, which, you know, obviously that was back whenever Bill Clinton had a reasonably good reputation before the pardon the subject matter. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Besides that, but it's more the get it done attitude, which makes sense because even Sonic nowadays, he's like, I don't like how this bad stuff is going, let's stop it. However, perhaps the most funniest thing ever about Sonic is that he can't swim, despite the fact that hedgehogs can do that. This is because of the fact that Yuji Naka, one of the other creators of Sonic the Hedgehog, had this mistaken idea that hedgehogs couldn't really swim at all, or that not all of them can. And I assume he knows that now, but I'd like to think that even nowadays Sonic still can't swim, that he never learned how to. Because the thing is, as it says here, he abandoned his home at a young age to pursue danger and adventures. I'd like to think that because he left his home at a young age, he never learned how to swim. But the good thing is, however, in any Sonic game that has any kind of elements related to water, there are air bubbles that you could actually breathe inside of. Like, you'll jump up to him and then there will be a little animation that plays out where Sonic's like breathing in the air bubble. Like, the air bubble doesn't shrink, but it just like he'll have this sort of like gasp look on his face because he breathes in the air from the bubble. But yeah, so that's the overall inspiration for this Speedy Blue Fella's design. However, Sonic didn't look like this until Sonic Adventure back in 98, then later 99 for his US release. However, let's get back to the subject at hand with Sonic CD. Yeah, so here's a fun fact. You're probably wondering, well, wait a minute, I thought you were going in order of the games that, like, in order of the date release. You know, the date of release, you know. Because technically, Sonic CD came out after Sonic 2. The thing is, however, in terms of story, this game takes place between not Sonic Adventure. It takes place after Sonic 1, but before Sonic 2. So because of that, that's why Tails isn't in that game. I mean, you can play as Tails in Sonic CD if you're playing the Origins collection, but yeah. But this game is notable for a few key reasons. For one, it was part of a, albeit kind of not very good peripheral for the Sega Genesis called the Sega CD. But the other thing is, some people have noted that this game's level design isn't as good as the other 2D Sonic games because it's sort of like a jumbled mess. Like, you'll have sections of high-speed movement, but it's sort of like Turrican, how Turrican has those sprawling level designs. It's sort of like this, but yeah, so yeah, so basically Tails was not playable in the original release of CD because, for one, even though CD came out after Sonic 2, the game's story takes place before Sonic 2. So, yeah. Anyway, so this game is also notable because it introduced a few other characters, such as Amy Rose and Metal Sonic. By a few new characters, I mean just two. Although it does include new stuff to the Sonic lore, like Little Planet. Although that was only seen in, oh, wait. Hold on, what? Oh! So, it does make an appearance, albeit through dialogue, in Sonic Adventure and its re-releases. But, yeah. Also, anyone remember how Sonic originally was born in Mobius? Yeah, so, Sonic's world is actually our world. That's a pretty cool little fun fact. So, originally in the Sonic lore, when it was first created, what would happen? Not what would happen, but originally there was a planet called Mobius where Sonic was from. I think that was like one of the original lore concepts for Sonic, but also credits to a certain linker named Zippo for this. Sonic Frontiers has abandoned the concept of two different worlds in the Sonic world. So we have Earth and Sonic's world. Sonic's world itself is literally our world. And Ian Flynn has actually backed this up. So technically, because of this, that means that if Sonic's world were to be like a real thing, the Starfall Islands would also be real. But here's the thing. Mobius itself is actually from like the very early things of Sonic, like the original games and the TV shows and stuff. But it was later revised into what would end up being, Sonic's world, otherwise known as Earth. So, yeah. Anyway, my point being, the locations in the old games still technically exist within Sonic's world, because Sonic's world is our world. But, yeah. So, you're probably wondering though, so wait a minute. Sonic CD, in terms of its chronological order in the Sonic series, is technically the second game, but why did it come out after Sonic the Hedgehog 2? Well, to answer that, let me say this. It's because of the fact that the Sega CD itself didn't come out until literally 92. And at that time, like, I'm talking about the North American launch. It came out in December of 91, so quite literally the same year as when Sonic first came out. But, here's the thing. Because of this system's release, or rather the peripheral's release, I'm calling it a peripheral. I know it's called an add-on, but I'm calling it a peripheral because it's an accessory to a console. So the only way to actually use the device would be to have it plugged into the, like the main system. But basically, Sonic the Hedgehog CD first came out, in Japan it was September the 23rd of that year. In America, 2 weeks, 2 months later. I can't speak. But what's interesting is I find it funny how the European market literally got the game before the North American market. But yeah, so basically what happened was Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was already planned to come out in 92 because it first came out. Actually, it came out within the same time frame as one another in each territory, although Australia didn't get it until the 1st of December. But, here's a fun fact for you. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is going to be turning 30 this year. This month. No joke. Like, literally on the 24th, which... Oh, dang. It'd be kind of funny if Sega acknowledges that and they do some kind of, like, cool little celebration in Sonic Frontiers. I don't know, though. Anyway, yeah, so in terms of the game's lore, like, the overall story of Sonic, and I'm talking about, like, the in-game, in-universe story, Sonic 2 would be the second... Actually, no, it would be the third overall, but Sonic CD is the kind of sequel to Sonic 1, but it's sort of an in-between. So it's sort of like the transitional story from Sonic 1 to Sonic 2. So, yeah. But the thing about Sonic 2 is it introduces another iconic character, Tails. So, now you understand why the stream is called, how did I forget the name of the stream? My phone's literally right here. Anyway, alright, I could just check my emails and see. Oh yeah, I called it In It to Win It. So, the In It to Win It thing is sort of like a double entendre, or whatever you pronounce it as. It's a reference to the fact that I'm talking about two games in the series. So we have Sonic CD and Sonic 2. However, I wanted to talk about CD first because I wanted to go in chronological order of the overall in-universe story of Sonic, from game to game to game. So Sonic CD is technically Sonic 2, but it's not Sonic 2. Think of it sort of like how games nowadays will have story DLC, but it's not considered a full-on sequel. It's sort of like an extension to the original game. So Sonic 2 itself is a brand new adventure. Although Sonic CD did introduce some new stuff. But this game introduced the fact that there's 7 Chaos Emeralds now. We have the fact that you have Tails. That's actually what he looks like in Frontiers. And here's the thing. Because of Ian Flynn's writing for Sonic Frontiers, I have a large amount of confidence that Tails is going to be how he was in the adventure games where, like, while he would depend on Sonic for certain things, because, Tails, he can't do everything by himself, but he can do certain things. And, basically, Tails himself is a genius. Like, he says it best right here.
I've changed a lot since I've started hanging with Sonic, but I can't depend on him forever. I know I can do this by myself.
Yes. That right there is what I hope to see from Tails in this game. And I have a good feeling that that is going to be the case. And let me explain why. So I know I'm deviating from the topic again, but I would like to say something. Ian Flynn, as I've already said before, knows everything about Sonic. He knows how the characters are in terms of characterization. He knows what they're supposed to be like in terms of how they behave. He knows the lore about the games themselves. Like, you know, the different locations in Sonic's world and, you know, all the ins and outs of the Sonic series, basically. So if anyone can, you know, correct Tails' behavior from how he has been in the more recent games, like, Forces! It's definitely Ian Flynn. And honestly, I'm really happy to see that our little buddy here is most likely going to be back to his old self. Just like, if you saw the animation thing yesterday, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that characters are being revived back to their old selves. Because if you saw the animation with Knuckles, he was literally like how he was in the older games. Like Adventure, for example, where Knuckles himself was a fairly timid character, and because of him being timid, he didn't really like being around people that much, because he's been on an island for a very long time, but at the same time, yeah, so
I'll probably be on this floating island forever, guarding the Master Emerald again. I may not know the whole story behind this, but perhaps it's better that way. I'm at peace once more.
I'm so glad that, just judging by that animation that we got yesterday, Knuckles is back to his old self. He's not a bumbling idiot like he was for the past several games. He's back to being his badass yet still curious self. As it says here, he's independent, wild, hot-blooded, tough, and a loner. So basically, Knuckles has a sort of short temper, but he's also a bit shy. Yeah, so it says here that Knuckles feels uncomfortable in places that he's not really familiar with. Like, for example, Station Square in Sonic Adventure, how he's not really used to places like that. I just said that! But like, he prefers the cozy, secluded, I literally cannot speak. He prefers the secluded life on Angel Island because it's pretty quiet there, and we also saw in that animation, which fleshes out Knuckles' character as well as what he actually does on the island, because for the longest time, some people have assumed that, you know, he just stays in front of the Emerald for a long time. However, it was seen in that animation that he actually does go to different locations in the various regions of Angel Island to check on stuff, make sure everything is okay. I have to say, I love how they fleshed out not only what it was originally intended that he did, but how he actually does his duties. And honestly, I am super, super glad that Ian Flynn took the time to flesh out Knuckles and what his characterization was supposed to be for all this time and make it a much more, it's faithful to what he originally once was. Because whenever we had Pontac and Graf, they made it seem like Knuckles, because of how strong he was an idiot. But let's just say this. Pontac and Graf should have never written for the Sonic series because they knew nothing about the Sonic series at all. Ian Flynn being here for Frontiers, and most likely the other games going forward, is a telltale sign that Sega ain't messing around. Sonic Team is not messing around. They are serious about wanting this game to succeed, and I believe it's going to. Come hell or high water. And not only that, but if you think about it, it makes perfect sense that Ian Flynn would want to, again, flesh out Knuckles to be what he once was, but also giving him more depth, like what he actually does on the island. So I'm glad that they've done that. Anyway, going back to the subject at hand. Tails. So, Tails himself, yeah, so, Tails himself is pretty cool. He's smart, he's clever. I know that probably, I don't know. But the thing is, I hate how Pontac and Graf made him out to be some cowardly kid, especially in the newer games like Forces. Because honestly, he deserved better. But anyway, so Tails was first introduced in Sonic 2, both 8-bit and 16-bit. And he's been in the series ever since. Wait, he was a cameo in that game? Hold on. Oh, right, that's right, because there's the codes you could put in on the sound test menu. Yeah, so he does technically appear in that game, but not as a playable character. Also, speaking of Sonic CD, let's not forget one of the most notorious Easter eggs. Fun is infinite with Sega Enterprises. Majin. Which, by the way, is loosely Japanese translated to devil. Bear in mind, they are not satanic worshippers, so don't worry, it's just an in-joke. Or, I think it was actually meant to be a reference to one of the developers. But, yeah. Yeah, see, Ian Flynn here, he knows everything about Sonic. I'm not trying to exaggerate that. He knows everything about our favorite blue speedster. But even he knows that Sonic CD does take place between Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. And even Sonic Origins itself, quite literally, if you're playing in story mode, you play through Sonic 1, Sonic CD, Sonic 2, and then Sonic 3 and Knuckles. I absolutely love that. Stardust speedometer. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, now let's get back to oh wait, it's Majin, not Majin. Never mind. Anyway, yeah, so this game, believe it or not, will celebrate its 30th anniversary next year. But this year we have In It to Win It. So, yeah, this is the other reason why I named the stream In It to Win It. Is, for one, I was talking about 2 games this stream, which is CD and 3. I was originally going to talk about Sonic CD last night, but I figured, you know what? I might as well include both of these. No, not these. This will be next stream, so that's tomorrow. Yeah, so, basically, what can I say about Sonic 2? Well, for one, it helped popularize the Sega Genesis. In fact, it actually made it explode in popularity. And you're probably wondering, well, wait a minute, how? Well, let's just say that because of the game's popularity, like the first game's popularity, this game boomed in terms of popularity. The thing is, though, not only that, the game itself popularized the term blast processing. Now you're probably thinking, wait, what do you mean? So, yeah. Blast processing. Quite literally, blast processing is, like I said last night, the term that Sega used to popularize just how fast the Sega Genesis was in terms of speed. Because, you know, it's got a Motorola 68000. And just saying the Sega Genesis has a Motorola 68000 chip processor, which means you'll be seeing games do this. I don't know if you could tell, but you probably saw the mouse flying around, but basically what I was trying to indicate is this game is really freaking fast. And that is best seen in levels like the Chemical Plant Zone. But, yeah, so Yeah, so it doesn't really say it here, but basically this game was the very game that popularized the term blast processing. Now, it was already apparent just by the first Sonic game that the Sega Genesis was not at all a slow system. It was incredibly fast. But the thing is, Sonic himself in this game did not have a speed limit in terms of like how fast he could go at a top speed. Because of this speed limiter being removed, yeah. He was fast. He was very, very fast. Yeah, so, anyway, and I believe that because of the fact that Sonic CD came out after this in terms of release, and it was on the CD, I'm pretty sure that it also had that same kind of thing where it would have super high speeds. Maybe? I don't remember. So, yeah. So, yeah, I think they'll just about cover Sonic CD and Sonic 2. Other than the fact that, like it said in this article, because of how the levels were designed in CD, like across all different versions of the levels aren't as focused on high speed movement. Because, Sonic is called Sonic because of you moving through the levels quickly, which is contradicted in CD because the levels are meant to be big and vast and encourage a whole lot of exploration, which, if you're playing a Sonic game, that's not really what you're meant to be doing. Like, you can explore, but you're not supposed to be doing it, like, to your heart's content, to where it's like you'll be spending minutes upon minutes upon minutes just going to a few spots and then going to the end of the level. The whole point is you can still explore, but the whole objective is to get to the end of the level. After all, in these old games, there was a 10-minute time limit, and if you took too long, time up. So, yeah. It was obvious that they would adopt the level design of Sonic 2 going forward, which would then be evolved in Sonic 3, which came out 2 years after in 94. So, yeah. By the way, it's funny to note, 5 years after this game came out was when we had the
rough transition into 3D.
which we'll see in a later episode. But anyway, with that being said, thank you very much for watching if you stopped by. If you haven't stopped by, then that's fine too. You can always watch this as a normal video on my YouTube channel. Anyway, with that being said, thank you for watching. I will see you guys tomorrow night for the next episode where we'll be talking about Sonic 3. Also, I'm not going to count Sonic 3D Blast because that's more of a spin-off. So, yeah. And that does not count as a 3D game.